Instantly claims central territory, opening diagonals for queen and bishop while preparing for pawn advances. Establishing central pawn presence immediately contests white's ambition for space and opens lines for piece development. Challenging the center immediately, this advance seeks to disrupt black's pawn structure and seize central space for dynamic piece play. Solidifying the center with e6 opens lines for the queen's bishop, preparing a flexible setup. Developing the knight to c3 bolsters the central pawn structure and prepares for kingside castling by creating a safer square for the king. Developing a knight to control the center and prepare for queenside expansion is a standard, flexible approach. Pinning the knight creates immediate pressure, forcing black to address the potential weaknesses it creates. Solidifying the center and preparing to castle, developing the bishop to a logical square. Fortifying the center and preparing for queenside castling. This solidifies white's pawn structure while maintaining flexibility. Safeguarding the monarch is paramount, now that the castled king has a clear escape route. Securing the kingside by developing the knight allows white to prepare for central pawn advances or a queenside expansion without compromising king safety. Securing the knight for eventual pawn support, this allows black to eye central breaks without leaving pieces undefended. Developing the bishop to this square aims to control the central dark squares and prepare for a queenside expansion. Sacrificing a pawn for a potentially more active position, black opens the d-file and aims to develop quickly, challenging white's central control. Reclaiming the central pawn opens the bishop's diagonal, preparing for future kingside pressure and potential pawn advances. Confronting the central pawn structure directly, black aims to disrupt white's harmonious development and reclaim central influence. Castling offers robust king safety and connects the rooks for future action along the central files. Releasing central pressure, black opens lines for their pieces and invites a pawn exchange, potentially simplifying the position and challenging white's central pawn structure. Recapturing here opens the e-file for your rooks, preparing a central grip that could stifle black's queenside play. Knight venturing to the queenside offers a dynamic pawn structure and potential piece activity, disrupting white's central grip. Recapturing on b3 wisely frees the bishop and prepares a solid pawn structure for white's queenside expansion. Reclaiming central space and preparing for pawn advances, this knight repositions to a more active square, challenging white's control. A bold gambit to disrupt black's pawn structure and open diagonals for the bishop. Sacrificing the pawn's central dominion now to improve the knight's scope, creating a more dynamic position. Exchanging the bishop frees up the knight and relieves pressure on the center, aiming for simpler endgame prospects. Reclaiming material, black ignites central counterplay and activates a knight, challenging white's pawn structure. Prioritizing king's safety, the queen prepares to join the fight by vacating the e-file, potentially for a rook later. Renouncing the central pawn push, black aims to regroup and develop a more harmonious piece structure. Establishing dominion over the d-file now becomes a priority, aiming to restrict black's queenside mobility. Preparing to expand on the queenside and potentially challenge white's central control with a6 and bb7. Asserting control over the open c-file signals white's intent to pressure black's queenside pawn structure. Liberating the bishop allows it to eye the d5 square and bolster the queenside structure. Solidifying the center pawn structure creates long-term stability, preparing for a potential pawn storm on the kingside. Boldly claiming the open file, black readies pressure against white's seemingly secure king. A daring sacrifice, aiming to shatter black's pawn shield and expose the king. Sacrificing the rook on f7 gambits the queenside for potential king-hunting opportunities, leaving black's monarch exposed to an onslaught. Unleashing the queen, white seeks to exploit the exposed black monarch by creating immediate mating threats on the kingside. The queen abandons her central post, perhaps sensing a coming storm, now aiming to secure the king from immediate threats on the queenside. Securing the central files and threatening the weakened dark squares around black's monarch presents a clear advantage. Liberating the pinned rook, black aims to disrupt white's queenside control and potentially activate the rook on the now open C file. Dominating the open file now, white prepares to apply relentless pressure along the first rank. A bold repositioning, sacrificing pawn structure for improved piece activity and a potential central blockade. Asserting dominion over the central files, this knight ignites a tactical storm, disrupting black's pawn structure and eyeing exposed weaknesses. A strategic retreat, preparing to reposition the bishop to a more active diagonal or potentially support a queen's sortie. Re-establishing pressure on the central files, the rook now actively participates in the fight for control. Seeking to secure the king and prepare for queenside expansion. Sacrificing the knight opens lines and assaults the uncastled king's dangerous potential. Reclaiming the queen opens lines and challenges white's compromised center, a vital defensive step. Seizing the initiative, this queen sacrifice forces a swift reckoning with the exposed black king, clearing the path for decisive follow-up.